The Fed has made a historical move, increasing interest rates from an absurd level of near 0% to an equally absurd level of 0.25% higher. Mainstream financial media has been repeating the Federal Reserve's words, stating that this move signals the strength of the U.S. economy. No, that's not a joke. Please don't laugh. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Obviously, the big news is the Federal Reserve's increase in interest rates, and immediately we saw the commercial banks increasing their prime rates. What does that mean? Higher interests for those needing to borrow money. Let's begin with this article out of CNBC. Equity markets in the US and Asia rose after the Federal Reserve raised its target Fed funds rate on Wednesday to a range of 0.25 to 0.5, the first increase since 2006. So previously, if the Federal Reserve decreased the interest rates, we would have the stock markets rising. But in this case, because everything is upside down, we can see how the stock markets would rise on an interest rate rise. Oh, that's quite confusing. In a statement, the FOMC said it will be some time before the central bank starts unwinding its 4.5 trillion, that's with a T, balance sheet, and insisted that the pace of increases will be gradual and dependent on the quality of economic data. The long-anticipated move indicates that the economy, this is not a joke, that the economy has finally developed enough upward momentum to withstand higher interest rates. That's according to traders, yes, the absolute reliable source. If that's the case, I just did videos recently, multiple videos, about how the stock markets are actually down for the year. And we're at the end of the year. That means no growth all year. Wall Street had widely expected the Fed to raise rates from its long-held near-zero range, a move that will have wide implications for global markets and interest rates. Absolutely, I do agree with that, and we'll see where they take it from here. Let's move on to the actual press release right from the Federal Reserve's own website. The committee decided to raise the target range for the Fed funds rate to 0.25% to 0.5%. Remember that there's a range that they play with. They don't necessarily keep it precisely where they want it. And here we have a return to 2% inflation. That's what they claim. But of course, there's deflation in many ways, but there's also inflation. And you, as an individual, get the worst of both worlds. Let's move on to this here. The Federal Reserve aggressively expanded a new policy tool to help it raise U.S. interest rates from near zero, saying on Wednesday it anticipated about $2 trillion in bids for a facility to help mop up excess cash in financial markets after years of stimulus. That's right. Somebody's going to come out there and save the day. That's right. Don't worry about it. Don't be concerned. The stock market can continue to rise. Everything is just fine. This article is out of Reuters, and basically it's talking about the situation, what happened, claiming that they're having new tools. Every day there's a new tool. We saw Operation Twist, which had basically no effect over the long term, but it's all about money printing and interest rates. What these tools are, it's nothing but really a sheet in front of you, preventing you from seeing the truth. The U.S. Central Bank, which raised rates modestly on Wednesday as expected, said there would effectively be no limit on a so-called overnight reverse repurchase program that is now capped at $300 billion. Remember that. Things are going to change. Analysts had expected the Fed to only double the size of the repo program to around $600 billion, but policymakers have repeated they want to prove they can control the short-term markets. They're saying, don't panic. We are taking care of this. Don't worry. But of course, things will change soon enough. In my book, I talked about rising interest rates. Obviously, going to be a concern as the years move on. And if that happens, foreclosures will increase and the banks will be forced to take away many more homes, as predicted by none other than the Federal Reserve in 2011. Rising interest rates will mean slower growth in the economy because less people are borrowing money and spending. Governments would have to pay more on the interest payments on their national debt, resulting in increased taxes. That's right, more taxes on you. How do you feel about that? Well, wonderful, because everything is just fine in the economy as long as I continuously pay more taxes. Hold on to that for just a moment. Look at this. The price of an average apartment in the New York borough of Manhattan has passed the $1 million mark for the first time. $1 million for an apartment, and that isn't a spectacular apartment. That's the average apartment. In fact, the median price is now $1.1 million, up 11% on the year. Extremely high numbers. I mean, this is ridiculous, and you see how expensive homes can get. I'll show you more of that in a moment. Over the next 2 years, drivers in the district will have to be watchful of more traffic cameras, 24/7 school zones where speeds are limited to 15 miles per hour, and fines of up to $1,000 for speeding violations. I've mentioned this before, but if you look at Toronto as an example, there's a few million people here, depending how you want to calculate it, the greater Toronto area or just Toronto. So Toronto, let's say it's 3 million people. If you take these 3 million people and look at the statistics, you'll find out that they achieved $92 million, if my memory serves me correctly. Let's say $90 million in parking tickets alone. With only 3 million people in the city, you should be able to take $90 million and have a successful, booming city. And to some degree, that is the case. But they're constantly in need of more money, higher taxes. Toronto has extremely high taxes, extremely high property taxes, sales taxes, and everything else. Everything you purchase has some sort of taxation on it, whether it's through your income taxes, whether it's through your consumption taxes. And we can get into the whole debate. It doesn't matter. All I'm saying is that you take a small but moderate-sized city who's raking in the dough, and what do they need? More cash every year. We need more. We need more. We need more. Okay, look at this. Paris Chateau sold for £200 million is the world's most expensive home. That's right, a 50,000 square foot palace. And you're looking at this, trying to realize who has the kind of money for this type of thing. It's gigantic, 50,000 square feet. And then at the same time, you have extreme rates of poverty. I continuously show you this type of data just to continuously highlight. This right here is when we get to the lowest of the low. This individual, Horowitz, went to Yale University. I'm sure most of you have heard of Yale. He said this: I decided to take this campus free speech debate to its logical conclusion. Horowitz asked students if they'd sign a petition calling for an outright repeal of the First Amendment. And he said the result was this unbelievable display of total stupidity. Yes, that's right. The people at Yale University supposedly are educated, knowledgeable individuals. The future of our cities and states and provinces and countries coming out of these Ivy League schools are saying, yeah, take away the First Amendment. We don't want that. We want to have the all-seeing eye in control. This is where I see most of the countries around the world going, and that is Venezuela as the example. What we're seeing here is Venezuela heading toward a political crisis. They're struggling at this time. Even the president, Nicolas Maduro, said, we're facing a large-scale crisis, a counter-revolutionary crisis that is going to generate a power struggle. This is extreme. When you hear, if you hear the quotes from World War II days, you would hear these type of things being said, but you don't really hear it that often anymore today. But here we go, spiraling down back into that territory. It's not just Venezuela, of course. We'll see this taking place in the so-called developed nations around the world, I assure you. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. I'm hanging in there, a little plugged up, but nothing to worry about. I'm still here to make videos, rain or shine. If you found this video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. You could actually flip through the book if you go over to Amazon. They have a look inside feature, which allows you to flip through the book and see if you like it. Take care.